Hansbrough
and gets
comes
another
right
rebound.
back in for another rebound. Watch out. He took a shot to the face.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Episode 2 of the Tobacco Road podcast. I'm Gerald Henderson alongside Tyler Hansbrough. Tyler, how you doing, man?
Doing great.
Good, man. I'm glad we're back. Want to say thank you to all the listeners out there. Got up to top 5 on iTunes for podcast last week. Only happens with you guys' views and listens and subscriptions. So we appreciate you all. And just thinking about it, let's get up to number 1 next week. Me and Tyler, competitors. I think that'd be a good thing. First or second week coming out and getting a top on the list right there. I think that's something we can achieve. So keep listening, and hopefully we can keep feeding you all the Duke and Carolina stuff that you guys want as we approach March Madness here in a couple months. I also want to mention later on in the podcast, we have Sean May coming on, formerly a player, now a coach at UNC. Looking forward to having him on, so listen for him coming on later. Last week, we covered the incident. Did we not, Tyler? The incident that happened.
We sure did.
Yep, 10 years ago. And, we got to the bottom of it, kind of hashed it out, and got each of our perspectives. And I think we're solid on it. Are we not?
Yeah, I think it was good insight, very detailed, both perspectives. Instead of listening to everyone's media's opinion or what happened, blah, blah, blah. So it was good. Okay,
good. And I listened to it last week, and there was a couple things that stood out to me, okay? Listening over from episode 1. And I love to critique myself, so I always trying to figure out ways that we can make our show better, right? So number 1 is 10 years ago I called you and apologized, but I will say this, man. At the time, I was told to call you and apologize. So I'm just going to get that off of my chest, okay? At the time, I wasn't in the same mind state that I am at today. A mature, now 30-year-old. I turned 30 on the 9th. A mature 30-year-old, clear-thinking, fully capable of making moral decisions adult, okay? So at the time, I was really just pissed about not being able to play in the next game, that we lost that game to you guys and I got ejected. That, in my mind, I was pissed about that. I broke your nose, and I cared, but I was like, you know what? Like, he's going to be all right. Tyler Hansbrough is a tough guy. He's going to be okay. He's going to be able to move on, right? So I want to say formally right now, because as I am remorseful, I am sorry, man, and I apologize. And I really mean it.
I appreciate it, man. Hey, even if it took you 10 years later to apologize, man, apology accepted.
Okay, I really appreciate that. One thing that I remembered this week listening to it for sure is number 1 is Coach K's press conference after the game. And I've brought this up to, my friends, and I haven't specifically talked to him about it, but it'll forever stick with me. And as we left the arena and get back to Duke, right, the first thing that I do is turn on the television, and it's on a local news station, and it's covering the game, and then obviously it covered the incident that happened. And so it goes from the incident, it goes directly to Coach K's press conference after the game. And the reporters were asking him questions, like pretty antagonizing questions. Hey, did Gerald do that on purpose? Was he told to foul Tyler hard? Is there going to be any? What do you think the repercussions should be? And Coach K listens to all this, and he says, you know what? Honestly, in this situation, I think Gerald's the victim. He says, I think Gerald's the victim. And I knew from that moment on, I would never have to question if Coach K had my back. Do you remember him saying that?
I didn't really listen to the press conference or, the questions. But, obviously when you're a coach like that, you have your players back. And,
Right.
I probably would have disagreed with them, to be honest with you.
I disagree.
It was my nose.
I disagree with him, right? And it's clearly your nose, right? But like at the time, right? I was like, and even now, I'm like, if you can look at that replay, right? Which was the replay was gruesome, right? It's worse than what seeing it live, right? So you can look at that replay, and your loyalty to your players is such that you can come out in the international media and say that, like, he will forever be a mentor, a friend to me, because he tried to protect me, right or wrong, right? I always appreciate that, even though I don't know, in that circumstance, it's hard to say that I was the victim. You were the clear victim. But I had to mention that. And also there's two other things that I left out last week was, so as we go, let's say a day after the incident, I know I'm going to be suspended for the next game. At the time, my young 19, 20-year-old bachelor self, no kids, single, I was dating a girl that went to your school, right? So, we all know Carolina is a great place. Beautiful buildings, beautiful campus, beautiful girls, right? Carolina girls. And so I was planning to go back over there to see this girl that I was dating at the time. And I get on Tobacco Road, right? Tobacco Road podcast. I get on Tobacco Road 15501, and I'm driving up, and you pass as you approach the school, you get up to the sorority houses, which are beautiful, right? Then as right after them, you got Franklin Street, which is you guys' Beale Street, right? This is where all the parties happening. I went there a million times. Me being friends with Wayne Ellington. So I get there, and right on top of one of the bars, right, sits this huge sign. I don't know if it's probably 10 by 30, maybe a sheet, right? And written out on it, and I will say this, right? I don't typically curse because it's just not the right thing to do. Try to set a good example, but I'll say this and repeat this as the classy UNC students probably wrote. The sign said, "F Henderson," right? Or it said "Die Henderson"? It said one of those. Do you remember seeing that sign?
Yeah, I do. It was actually a frat that was right by the sororities, which, thinking about it, I mean, what a great placement for a frat. But
right.
Yeah, I remember driving down the road and I see this big sign. I don't know who I'm with. I don't know if I'm driving by myself or what. And there was a moment where I was like, yeah, screw that dude. And kept on driving.
Right.
And I loved it.
I was going to ask you, like, now to hearing that, wouldn't have to ask you the question, but I was going to ask you, did you have anything to do with that sign? Were you notified of that sign? Did you tell him to take it down? Because I know I wouldn't tell him to take it down. If I were
I had nothing to do with it, but I would never tell him to take it down. I loved it.
And you know what, man? I loved it too. I really did. I drove by it. I slowed down a little bit. At the time, we really didn't, camera phones weren't a big thing. But I remember going by it and just this little snickering laugh. That's actually pretty cool. I probably deserve that. And, it just goes to show you, man, how deep rooted the rivalry is, right? If we can paint a picture of you in college, right? We talked about briefly your accolades as a college player. So, you are one of Carolina's golden boys. Besides Michael Jordan, I can't think of another player in Carolina history that's had an illustrious career like yourself. And the way that you did it, right? Everyone saw it. So, I come in, Duke freshman, hyper, overexcited, over-aggressive, and just put you down, man. And it's a lot. I'm for Carolina people, it was a big deal, and it should have been, right? So
definitely. I mean, it was center stage, and the students. There were some people that were really mad about it, and I liked that. I liked it when people came up like, "Man, screw that dude," blah blah blah. And then there were some other sides, kind of like you said. You got some UNC people coming up to you, and I got a lot of Duke guys occasionally that would come up to me and say a little something. But I mean, they took it hard too.
Oh yeah. So then, as after that, I'm getting. You come to their office at Duke, and we have our mail little slots. Typically, most of the stuff's in there. If people send it, you guys probably have it at Carolina. People sending you mail to sign stuff, send it back, right? Maybe, trading cards, or sometimes they'll send jerseys or whatever it may be. And so I go into my slot, I pull out all my stuff, and it's a little, it's a little more than I'm used to getting weekly. Like this is, I'm my stuff's like flowing into like some of our walk-on stuff. Like it's a lot to handle. So as I start opening it, right, it's death threat letters, right? You did this, and I'm not going to repeat all the stuff that was said on there because this was some stuff that would be some serious news back then, at least. But it was some stuff that, not that I was scared or anything, but it's like, hey, this is really touched some people, right? This has made some people
definitely.
really angry.
I think I think that might have been going a little bit too far.
Oh yeah.
But obviously, death threats and things like that. Hopefully that nothing was ever serious. But yeah, I mean, I remember driving through campus and seeing that sign and talking to some of the students, and it was there was a lot of people upset.
Yeah. And it's just so funny. Like something like that can happen, and it's like huge news, like on campus in North Carolina, whatever it is. Now 10 years later, people will remember it, but just other stuff's going on, man. Life has moved on. But I'll say this one last thing is, as I go back to Carolina the following year, my sophomore season, we're playing you guys. We talked about this game last week where we beat you guys. We hit a whole bunch of threes. We had like a great game. And so there's this picture. If you go online, you can see it. And I'm sitting there at the free throw line. I got the ball and I'm about to shoot. And it's not really zoomed in on me. The camera angle's from behind me, and it's a you can see the whole entire student section is behind the basket, and they're holding up these pictures of my face, and on top of it, it says "wanted," right? So as I'm a convict coming into this game, and I'm there, and they got me, right? So under it says "wanted," and it says for assault, battery, and douchebaggery, right? I don't know if you remember that. But
I remember the picture, but I didn't remember reading all that stuff under it. But at the time I was like, man, we can come up with something a little better than that. And then I didn't know it had all that stuff under it, so that was pretty good.
Oh yeah, so that was funny. You got tens of thousands of Carolina faithful holding up those signs, and I remember going up there. I made both free throws because I love stuff like that. That gave me so much more incentive, like to do well. And I remember that game. But now that we've covered that, I'm sure it'll come up again, man. It does once a week for us at some level. But now that we've covered that, let's get into what I'm sure the UNC fans would love to bring up. And that is Duke got their first loss of the season this week. They got their first loss to BC. They went up there, cold Massachusetts, and they played kind of like they've been playing this season. They score some points. They're going to score, but just didn't play defense, kind of played around with the game a bit. BC came out hot. I think when you play a team, if you're BC, if you play a team like Carolina or you play a team like Duke, it's your biggest game of the year, right? So, you come out and obviously if you're a Duke, you got a target on your back. They came out, hit 15 out of 26 threes and were hot. Duke actually had the lead and the ball with 3 minutes to go in the game and just couldn't pull it out. They've been able to this season. They beat Florida. They beat Indiana, right? These are all games that have come down to the end, right? And for whatever reasons, probably because of their talent level, will to win, and, probably got to do with some coaching. They were able to pull it out, but this time, really, it bit them in the ass. And, they're playing with fire, and it just, that's what the game does to you sometimes. So, Marvin Bagley didn't play his usual self. Grayson Allen didn't play well either. So, you got their two best players not playing well, and you're still in the game, but just, get their first loss. And it's tough being a number one team coming into a place like BC where you don't really think that it'll be a tough test. But now you start the ACC season, and things are a little bit differently. So I'll ask you, Tyler, what is it like being a Carolina coming into a Boston College who's not ranked, right? The ACC was great. It was even better when we played. But what was it like coming into an environment like a BC, being a top team, a number one team, and having to get yourself up to play?
Well, I think, if one thing is, I think when you have freshmen, as many freshmen as Duke has, and then they go into to start the ACC conference play, and it's a road game. And the thing about conference play is anybody can beat anybody, and especially if you're Duke or North Carolina. So when you go into Boston College was really tough for us when we were in school. They had Jared Dudley there my first couple of years, and he was really good. They had some good players. But when you go into Boston College, I mean, this is their, in a lot of ways, I don't like saying it, but that could be their national championship.
Right. Right.
Especially, Duke being the number one team in the country, and, it's the start of the ACC play for probably both teams, and then you have the student sections probably going crazy. It might be one of the only games all year that they sell the place out, and so they want to give their students and their college something to cheer about.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And, a team like Boston College, I didn't see the most recent rankings, but not sure if they became ranked after that or not. But just like you said, that's their biggest game. It's like a national championship game for them. And, as a freshman, I talked last night with Duke's coach and my really good friend, John Shire, about the game a bit. And, as a freshman, you just don't understand, right, how good all the players are, right? Everyone may not be a pro. Everyone you may not hear about, like you hear about a Marvin Bagley or, you hear about a Grayson Allen. You don't hear, these are guys that are in the media. Everyone knows about them. And, they're going to be lottery picks. But there's still some really good college players out there that are capable of putting up big games. When you talk about, like, when we played, the guard play in our league at the time was crazy, right? So you got like guys like Sean Singletary, okay, who ended up being a pro for a few years, but he was one of the best players in the country. I don't know what he did to you guys, but he killed us.
Well, I remember going in there and Tyrese Rice gave us 50.
Right.
Gave us 50-something.
He was going to be the next guy I brought up. Like, he was first team all ACC. Maybe not the athleticism or size to be, like a really good pro. But you talk about the best player, one of the best players in the country. There weren't many more than him, right? He went overseas and had a really good career. But he was a killer, man. You score 50 points in the game, like, That's extremely hard to do on any level, right? So
Yeah.
got a guy like Jack McClinton, right, who can shoot the ball from half court, and didn't, for whatever reason, injuries or whatnot, or decision, just to change his career. He's actually a buddy of mine now. He has this betting company called Active Dreamers, which I'm involved in as well. And, he's got another career, but he was an animal in college, right? And
definitely.
But as a freshman, unless you go out there and play against these guys, you may see them on TV, but you just don't know. You just don't know how good they are.
Yeah, and I think when I was in school, it took me a few years to realize, and even the year we won it, we started conference play 0-2, and anybody in the ACC can beat anybody on a given night.
Yep.
And I think being young, I think it takes time to realize, hey, we've got to show up and play every game, or we're going to take an L.
Yep. So, it's all a learning process. I don't think anyone ever thought that Duke would. At least I didn't. The way that they were playing, got a lot of talent, but I never thought that they'd go undefeated and win a national championship. And I can't honestly think of a team that's done that. Maybe back in the day, an Indiana team, way before our time. But I think for Duke, it's just a bump in the road. They obviously have talent. They're still in the top 4 on the polls, which the polls really don't even matter. You know that. But, they just need time now. They're going through exams, and they'll have some time to practice, refresh themselves as they get into some more ACC play. But as a young team, it's so important to practice. You don't have to kill them, but to get in there, work on your habits, right? You still, even in December, right, you played, 12, 13, 14 games. Your habits you still have high school habits, right? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Duke being so young, I think some guys are still building chemistry.
Right.
And, getting to know each other and knowing each other's game, and also being the first ACC road game for a lot of these guys, I think that kind of played in a factor. And I looked at the stat sheet, and I think BC caught fire from the 3 too. I think they shot 57%.
Yeah.
So it's always hard to beat a team when they catch – they get hot like that from behind the arc.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so here's what I wanted to ask you is, so have you, and when you were at Carolina, did you ever lose to an unranked team like a BC, in a ACC game, where you were the top team and they came in and beat you?
Yeah, there's been some games. I remember Virginia Tech was always a real tough place to play, and I remember losing there. And the crowd really got into it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how it is once they get a momentum going, and then it's just, you can barely hear things, and then, a few calls don't go your way, and then everybody's frustrated, and then you're on the plane thinking about, man, what's practice going to be like the next day? And then you have to sleep on it, which is probably worse than practice, is sleeping and thinking about what you're going to do the next day in practice.
Yep. That is something that somebody who doesn't play basketball or just a fan would never understand. I don't know if you've been back to Carolina and seen how they practice now, but I can only imagine it's not the same way that we practice, which the way we practice probably wasn't the same way that they did it 10 years before us. But I know for sure when I go back now and I look at Duke practices and I'm like, what? This is it? There's not another hour and a half of drills after practice, or there's so much emphasis on rest and stuff now, but that was one of the worst things. What is tomorrow going to be like? Right. Yeah.
It seems like every former player always comes back and man, these guys don't practice like we used to.
Yeah. That's crazy. So, I asked you that question. So I specifically remember, and there's a couple times we were ranked and lost to some teams, not unranked, but that we felt like we should have won. But there was one specifically. I can't give you a date on it. I know it was 2009, and we had just beat Maryland, who had Grievous Vasquez, who was All-American and a good pro. Grievous, before this Maryland game, he had come out in the media and said, "Yeah, I can't wait to go up to Duke. That's my house." right? You know, he used to talk a whole bunch of junk, which I
I
loved.
played with Grievous in Toronto.
Did you?
Yeah, and he was a killer in college, man. I think he gave us a triple-double maybe when we went up to Maryland.
Yeah,
he was a beast.
He had a skill set, man. Could shoot, could score the ball, pass it. You know, a big guard. He's like 6'5", 6'6". And so they came into Maryland, or they came into Duke, right? And we're the second seed. I forgot who was the first seed at the time, but they had lost earlier that day. So we knew that if we beat them, that we were going to be the number one team. So they came in there and we jumped on them, man. We were up probably, I think the score was like 60-20 at halftime. It was unbelievable. And the party after the game, right? So let's talk about that. So we knew we were going to be the number one team, so we partied so hard, man. Like, we had so much fun that night. You know, it's college. You know, what else are you going to do on a Saturday night? So we go out, we have a good time. Monday or Tuesday, we play Wake Forest, okay? Away game. We're the number one team. Jeff Teague is playing with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I just watched them the other night. They had James Johnson playing for Miami Heat. Al-Farouq Aminu, who was my teammate in Portland, is still there now. So they had some pros. And we went in there, played. We didn't play bad, but it just came down to the last play. They beat us on a out of bounds play, beat us, and took away our number one ranking, just like that. It was like literally we had it for like 3 days, man.
Yeah, that same team gave us an L in their home arena too. I mean, they were a very talented team.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
you would think
they were good.
You know, for whatever reasons, I don't think they did much in the tournament, but that was a special, talented team for sure.
Yeah, looking back, they underachieved, but they had talent. I remember us going in there, and James Johnson went off. It seemed like we couldn't stop him. The guy was so athletic, and then Aminu and Jeff Teague went off too. It was a nightmare for us.
Yeah.
North Carolina beat Western Carolina, their past game. I think the thing to take away from this game, obviously, you know, it's exam week and we're supposed to win, but I think Jalik Felton really came on, and I think he's a talented freshman that you kind of want to keep your eye on. And I think the more practices and the more games he gets involved with, I think his comfort level is going to get better and better. And I think he's going to be a key piece to our team going on down the road. It's going to help us get some wins. All right, today we got a national champion, a Final Four MVP, an All-American. His jersey's in the rafter, Sean May. Sean, thanks for coming on. Here's my first question for you. How did you end up at North Carolina? You're from Indiana. Your dad played at Indiana. Obviously, he had a great career there. You probably had a little pressure. Why North Carolina?
Man, you know what? I never thought about going anywhere else. Honestly, I always thought I played Indiana. My dream was always to wear 42, which was my dad's number at Indiana. And when Coach Knight got fired, it kind of opened up everything, kind of opened up my eyes, honestly, that there was other schools out there that valued me and that I could help and go get a great education, have a good career. And I came down here. My dad played for Coach Smith in the Olympics. He said, hey, let's go look at North Carolina. He knew Phil Ford. And there was just a comfort level that I didn't have anywhere else. I knew Phil would help me if I needed anything. My mom was moving down here regardless. She always wanted to move to North Carolina. She was going to move to Charlotte, but when I decided to come to Chapel Hill, she moved down to Raleigh instead. And it was just a comfort level, man. All the guys on the team were really, really nice. Jason Capel was my host, and we kind of connected, had a great relationship ever since. And it was just a comfort level of the people, the place, obviously the conference and the games that I'd be able to play in was a big factor in the style of playing. I knew I'd play right away. So all that combined, it was an easy decision for me to make. And looking back, it was probably the best decision of my life.
Well, I think a lot of people are happy you made that decision. You had a great career at UNC. Now, during your time, you came in and Daugherty was the coach, and then Coach Williams came over. What was the transition from the start with Coach Williams, and did you have a relationship with Coach Williams? Did he recruit you, or did you know anything about him before?
So the thing, Coach Daugherty, it was tough my freshman year. They coming off an 8-20 year. We started off. We actually beat Coach Williams in Kansas, they were number one. We beat them in the preseason NIT, and so we were feeling good about ourselves. We were 10-1. Broke my foot, and so that ended my year. And things just kind of spiraled from there. We were young, probably a little immature, thought highly of ourselves, and we really weren't that good. And it just wasn't a good fit and a good mix. And you know, Coach Doherty got fired later that year. Coach Williams comes on. And the crazy thing about Coach Williams, he was the very last coach to ever call me in my recruiting process. And it was right before I announced that I was coming to Carolina. And he asked, you know, would I come and visit Kansas? And I had known a lot about him. I had seen him. I watched him play a ton. And I told him, no, I didn't think it was fair to the other coaches. And I was scared to death at his press conference at North Carolina when he decided to come here because I thought he would remember it. And fortunately, he didn't. And we got off to a great start, and our relationship has been awesome ever since. But just the attention to detail that he pays and the respect that he has for his players and the position that he puts his players in, I was very fortunate and blessed to be able to play for him, and I got lucky.
Coach Williams, obviously, he's had a whole plethora of bigs that have just come in and had great careers, at Kansas, then North Carolina. Were you familiar with the system, and did you know that, he likes to go inside out and how much he likes to run?
Yeah, that was a fortunate thing for us is, Coach Doherty played for Coach Smith, and he coached with Coach Williams. He worked for Coach Williams for 6 or 7 years before he got his head job at Notre Dame. So we ran exactly the same stuff that we run now and that Coach Williams implemented when he first got here. There were a little bit of differences, but all the terminology, the names of the plays, all that was the same. So for us, I think it allowed us to get off to a great start because we didn't have that learning curve to make up. It was almost like we had been with him before, and we just hit the ground running. But I had known that Coach loved to throw the ball inside. I always knew he had good bigs. I never knew how much he emphasized it until he got here. And for a guy like me and for bigs that want to dominate inside, for Coach, he preaches more about throwing the ball inside and getting the balls to his big probably than any coach in the country. And fortunately, I was lucky enough that he was here to allow me to do that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Now, when you got to UNC, was the rivalry with Duke, was it anything like you thought? What did you think of it? Were you like, man, these people are crazy? Did you enjoy going over to Duke? What was it like for you?
You know what, man? It was seeing it on TV as a high school kid. You can't really understand it until you're just a part of it. I tell people all the time, for as much as the fans love it, it's different for players. There's a hatred, but there's a respect there too. That you have a program that has done so much, and they produce great players, and you want to go against the best. And for me, to be a part of it, Sheldon Williams and I were really good friends in high school, and to go up against one of your really good friends, twice a year, 3 times a year, and it's going to be a battle. They had Shavlik, Randolph. I mean, they had a heck of a squad. Sean Dockery. But for me, I knew it was a lot, and I knew it was intense, but I never knew it was the magnitude of what it was, and still is. And it's to me one of the best things in sports that we have. Best rivalries, whatever you want to call it. But it's great to be a part of. But I think there's also a mutual hatred, but a mutual respect there as well.
Hey, Sean, so I got to ask you, man, I'm going to bring it back. I got a couple questions for you. So number one, did you ever consider going to Duke? Were they ever in your recruitment process? Did you ever talk to Coach K? Because I know we would have loved to have you at Duke too, just so you know.
Man, the thing about it is I played with Jared Jeffries in high school, and he was 2 years ahead of me. And a lot of people don't know this, but he had told Duke the night before he was coming.
Right.
And it had a long recruitment process. And the night of his press conference, he went home to his grandmother. His grandmother was really sad that he was never going to be able to play. And at the press conference, he just flipped it and went to Indiana.
Wow.
And because of that, I honestly believe that Duke wouldn't recruit me. They just felt that there was no way I was going to leave Indiana. My dad played there. And so I never got recruited by him. That was really the only school that never recruited me. I grew up watching Duke. Wouldn't say I was a Duke fan, but it's something I would have entertained. But, it all works out. They had already signed Sheldon, so it would have been a battle between us two. And then Shavlik went on board, so I decided to come to North Carolina.
Okay, I get it. Well, we would have loved to have you, man. And I know we had watching you guys. You had some great battles. I was it's probably a junior in high school when you were still playing, and I committed to Duke right around that time. But I'll ask you, because me and Tyler kind of discussed this, is, you know, what are some moments that you specifically remember from playing in the Duke Carolina game, whether it be at Cameron or at the Dean Dome? Because, you know, we talked about some of the, you know, specifically, you know, feeling tired or just the floor shaking. Is there anything that you can remember from playing in those games that you experienced?
Well, the one thing for sure is it's got to be the loudest building in college basketball. I mean, I know it's small, but 9,000 people making that much noise. Student section was always crazy. And in my heart of hearts, I believe that the building is never really that hot. I don't know how in the heck they get it so hot. The locker room's hot. You can't get the sweat off. I mean, it's unbelievable. But I just remember it's always so hot and the floor's always wet. You're always wiping off. I never won at Cameron, and that's something I always regret and have to live with. We had a chance down one, and Ray and Rashad messed up a play. I blame it solely on those two. And David Noel dribbled off his foot. I blame him. And we ended up losing the game. That was tough, but the battles were just great. You know, I had some of my best games at Cameron, some of my best games against Duke, but it was always close. Chris Duhon beats us in a double overtime game on an up and under, and Jawad Williams didn't stop the ball. I blame him. But it was fun, man. It was always a battle, and we had some great times, man.
Just to go back, so you're talking about in 2005, you guys might have been down 1 or 2. I don't know how I remember this, but as I was being recruited, I sat in the office with Coach K and all the coaches, and they showed me this specific play. And it was you guys. I think you guys run like a pick and roll. It's like a misdirection, and then you have the big go down and get maybe Rashad McCants. Am I right?
Yep. Exactly.
And you guys, Coach Williams still runs this play. And for whatever reason, Coach K told me we knew they were going to run this play. And so we had, I don't know if it was Lawal or JJ, kind of top block it so that he couldn't be screened. And so I don't know if it was Ray or somebody else who just they saw that the action wasn't going to work on the left side, so dribble it off to the right side, and it dribbled off somebody's foot and went out of bounds. But I remember that specifically because that was a play. It's like, no, we know they're going to run this play, and you know the Duke defense, we shut you guys down. So it's funny that happened probably over 12 years ago, and it's still in my mind.
Exactly, that's exactly what happened. We had beat UConn, and Rashad hit a game winner running that same play, and we knew the way you guys set up on defense. We knew that they knew what we were doing. Everyone probably could sniff out what we were doing. We always run that play. It works. And JJ topsided it, and I didn't screen him. Mm-hmm. And so that was my fault. But with that said, I slipped the screen, and I was wide open, and Raymond couldn't make the play. And, it's on Raymond. Raymond's got to make that play.
Ray.
And we ended up turning it over. And but I think, honestly, losing that game helped us. I think knowing that we didn't execute and that you guys threw a wrinkle in, and we allowed that to defeat us, and we weren't ready for it as players, I'm saying, it allowed us to be more focused on what we were doing late in games, and I think it helped us later in the tournament as well.
And you guys went to win the national championship that year. Is that correct?
Yeah, same year, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And how was that for you?
Man, it was awesome for me because I started playing my best basketball around that time. Right after that was the last game. No, that wasn't the last Duke game. We came back and played you guys at home. And I just started playing my best basketball. Our team started playing the best. And I think, as you know, from being in it, you want to peak at the right time. And our team was peaking at the right time. We lost in the ACC tournament. We came back, got to work, and we ran off 6 straight going into the tournament. But we were playing our best basketball. And it wasn't always pretty, but we always found a way to win. It's one of the best accomplishments that I've ever had in my life, being able to help take a program where we were hurt. We were 8-20, 3 years prior, and then now we were back on the national stage and winning a championship. It it was an unbelievable experience for me.
Yeah, the turnaround from your freshman year to the end of your junior year has got to be crazy. After you won the championship, what kind of feeling? I mean, obviously, when I won it, it was just kind of a relief for me. What was it for you? Was it excitement? I mean, did you?
You know, I was excited, but I was. It wasn't about me personally. I was excited for the program because I know how much it meant to so many people, and for us to be in a position that we were for a few years, and to finally be back to where we always belong, where we felt we belonged. That's where my excitement came from. You know, and you know, it just, you know, the hard work that Jawad and Melvin Scott and Jackie Manuel, those seniors who stayed and played, went through that 8 and 20 year, didn't transfer, didn't try to get out and go find another place. Where you see a lot of that now in college basketball is, you know, guys just, you know, they quit and move on and do something else or try to go somewhere else. They battled it out, and for them to do that, I was happy for them. You know, it was great for me. I think it helped me move on and push me to the next level. But I was more so excited for our university and our team.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to get back to the Duke games and the ACC. Would you rank Duke as the toughest place to play in the ACC when you were there?
Absolutely. I don't know if there's no 1B. It's Duke. I think for other programs, it's us and Duke. But for me personally, I always felt you were going to have a battle, and you had to go in there with the right mindset, and you couldn't be weak. They're good. You know, you're getting a team that is just as good athletically. They're just as good when it comes to executing what they want to do. They're just as good when you talk about overall programs. So for me, there's no other place in the country that matches the same that I feel to our level, and that's why I always love playing there. That's why I'm glad we get to play them twice a year.
As your role now, right, being a coach on staff, and what's the status of you guys' program coming off of a national championship year? And I'd love to ask you how that was for you last year. But you know, how is it now being a coach? What are the differences? You know, being a coach and a player, both at UNC, and winning a national championship as a player and winning it as a coach.
Well, it's crazy, man, because, you know, you've got these knuckleheads that are 17 years old. You're just trying to get them to do the things that you want them to do. And for whatever reason, I can't believe we were that difficult and to our coaches, you know what I mean? Just trying to get them to run the right plays and execute. I'm joking, but I think for me as a coach now, man, last year in particular, and even with Marcus' senior year, I wanted Marcus and Bryce to feel what I felt with my teammates after we won. And I want Coach to win for all the hard work that he puts in and our staff, but I'm so just recently removed from playing that I still have somewhat of a player's aspect that I want these guys to feel what I went through. And even last year going through it and being able to see our seniors and our juniors when they came off the court, tears, excitement, joy. You know, I talked to our guys before the national championship game. I told them those memories, it's not about the game. You won't remember certain plays that happened in the game, but you'll remember those moments for the rest of your life. The confetti's falling, the hugs, the locker room, those things will never leave you. And being able to see that from this side and seeing how our guys felt was a pure joy for me. The one thing I didn't realize how much coaches do. You know, when I was a player, you know, my favorite coach here was Coach Holliday, and every time I went in his office, he was never there. And so I used to give him a hard time that he doesn't do anything. But, man, coaches grind. I mean, they just all day, the recruiting, all the administrative stuff. It's truly been a joy to be a part of it and see how much coaches really do, the attention to detail that you have to have. I'm thoroughly enjoying and learning a lot, seeing it from this side. And it's been a blessing, man. It really has.
I'll add on to what you just said. So, you know, as a player, you know, you come to the gym, you do what you got to do, you practice, you do whatever you got to do after, and you leave, right? But you don't really pay attention to, okay, you get there, the coaches are there before you get there, okay? They're whatever they're working on, you know, whether it be stuff for the game you're about to play or a team, you know, that you're going to play in a week or so. They're working on that. They're working with you in the gym, right? And then you probably going to leave before the coach because they're probably working on something else, or they're going in there and, getting on the elliptical or getting a workout in themselves. And as I've been going back to Duke, rehabbing and whatnot, I've been going in there and being in the coaches' meetings. And, they'll play a game. Coach K they'll play a game, and Coach K will want to immediately watch the tape after, no matter what time the game's at. So if it's a noon game, 9:30 game, he wants to watch it. Then they're going to watch another game, from the team that they're about to play, maybe another highlight film. Then they'll sit there and talk about the team, where everybody's at. And, it's surprised me just, you just, as a player, you're just playing. You don't think about all the stuff that goes into it. But there's so much thought and care that goes into each player and the status of your team, especially a Carolina and a Duke, because they know, you guys know how important these games are and, what's on the line. So I commend you, man, for being a part of that.
Yeah, it's been great, man. And to piggyback off that, the thing I think that, especially I would assume here and at Duke that has been a joy to see, they're not always looking at right now, right? Like coaching, I assume Coach K is the same way. They have a special trait to be able to see the big picture and be able to see, we need to do X, Y, and Z now that's going to prepare us for when we play Duke or when we play Virginia and we don't play them for 15 games. And that part of it has been, I've always been intrigued about the science. I call it like the science of basketball. Like, with you run your play and I'm trying to figure out how to counter you and then you counter me. I've always been intrigued by that. But being able to see how coaches can take a step back and look at the big picture and figure out, how to manipulate their team, not for now, but for the long haul. Man, it's been awesome for me to be able to see that, man. It really has been.
So my last question for you would be, the status of you guys' team after coming off a national championship last year and having some guys leave, important players. Where are you guys at? What are you doing with them specifically each day? And, what do you think the potential of your team is going forward?
So with our team, with my role, I can't get on the court. So I can't do anything on the court with our guys in practice, which is a bummer for me because that's where I feel like I'd be best utilized. But I think there's, traits and things that I can learn simply by watching. But a lot of the stuff I do with our guys is administrative stuff, anything they need within their personal lives, housing, scholarships, all that. I deal with them on a day-to-day basis. And then from a basketball standpoint, I watch a lot of film with our guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I've always done when I played. I was a huge film watcher and just trying to get guys to look and be able to see what they're doing has been great and a great tool we've utilized. Our team itself, we're in a good place. I think we had a better start than we probably envisioned. Our big guys, our young big guys are coming along. It's going to take them a little bit longer, but each and every day they're getting better. So we've been encouraged by that. I think the play of Luke May and what he's been able to do has surprised everybody, but he puts in the work. And I think he's been a great example of what hard work does. You just get in the gym, you and the ball, and you go to work, and good things will happen. Theo Pinson and Joe Barry, Kenny Williams, I tell people all the time, to have a young team, we're young in the right spot, meaning that it's not a point guard. It's not a two-man who's got the ball in their hands a lot of the times that has to make decisions that may win or lose you games. We've got veterans that are there. So we're just trying to bring our team up to speed and get them on the same level as our seniors, because our seniors know what it takes, and they know what it means to play here, to have that name on the front of the jersey, to play for all the players and all the people that have come before you. And we're just trying to get everybody else up to speed. But in that process, because it's all a process, we feel good about ourselves. And we're just trying to get better day by day. It'll be a long year. It'll be a good year. We've got a lot of talent. Kenny Williams is playing his tail off. We're waiting to get Cam back here soon from Pitt, and kid from Pitt. And he's going to be good for us. So he's going to give us some added depth. But I like where we're at. We just got to continue to move in the right direction and not peak too early.
That sounds good, man. Well, we hope you guys improve. We hope you don't improve too much before we play you guys. later this season. But we
we hope you
appreciate you
guys
coming
tone
on.
it down a little bit.
Yeah,
no problem, man. Anytime.
Sean, we appreciate you coming on. I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. Hopefully we can get back to you in the middle of the year and get a little update from you.
All right, boys.
All right, everyone. That wraps up the episode. We appreciate you guys listening. Next week, we'll have Carlos Boozer on and hopefully another special guest. To follow us, go on your social medias. It's Tobacco Road Pod. Mine is G_Hender09, both on Twitter and Instagram. And Tyler's tag would be Master Hansbrough, BRUH, bruh. And we want you to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Hopefully we can get a #1 ranking this week. We're going for it. So it only gets there with you guys' support and reviews. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys next week.